Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. 안녕하세요, or 안녕하세요. My apologies for taking so long to make another video. We are right in the middle of rainy season here, and it's literally been raining every day for the last 3 weeks. My intention was to do this video walking around at the park outside. It doesn't look like I'm gonna be able to do that. The weatherman's calling for another week of rain. Typhoon's coming. I'm getting constant notifications on my phone for flood warnings and landslide warnings. So here we are in the safety of my apartment. When I first came to Korea, I thought maybe I'd do a year, 2 of English teaching and then either go back to Canada or move on somewhere else in the world. Well, that was 10 years ago and I am still here. I know I've got friends and family back home wondering, what's Dan doing over there? Why is he there so long? Is he ever coming home? So I thought I would take this opportunity to tell you guys some of the reasons that I've stayed in Korea for so long, or in other words, some of the things I like about living in Korea. Now, before I get started, I want you to know living in Korea is not all sunshine and rainbows. There are definitely things I don't like, things that annoy me, things I don't understand, but in general, it's been a pretty good experience. And these are not in any particular order. I'm going to start kind of with the bigger reasons first, and then I got a couple bonus things at the end. But let's get started. One of the biggest reasons I like living in Korea is the restaurant culture. Korea is pretty well known around the world for certain things. Chances are you have a Samsung or LG TV or some other appliance, phone. You've got companies like Hyundai and Kia. K-pop is getting popular globally. And of course, you've probably heard of kimchi and Korean barbecue. Korean barbecue definitely lives up to its reputation. I am not a foodie. I eat very simply during the week. I cook all my own meals at home. But I do love going for barbecue here. It's a very fun experience. There are restaurants absolutely everywhere. Within a 60-second walk of the front door of my apartment, there has got to be at least 20 barbecue restaurants serving all kinds of meat. Pork would be the favorite. Definitely Koreans can't live without their samgyeopsal or belly pork. My favorite is the beef. You've also got lamb is a common one. I got a lamb restaurant across the street. Chicken, you can get chicken known as dokgalbi here. It can be a little spicy, but also very delicious. And then you've got something called gopchang. Gopchang is either beef or pork intestines and internal organs. And it's not everyone's cup of tea. I like it, not all the time, but it's pretty interesting. I'd have to say cow heart is one of my favorite cuts of meat here. Very delicious. So it's not just the meat that I find appealing about Korean barbecue. It's kind of the whole experience. You've got the fire in the table. So you cook your own meat. You got your tongs, you got your scissors. You're responsible for cooking your own meat. Love that. It comes with all kinds of side dishes that are unlimited. And of course, no Korean barbecue experience would be complete without a bottle or 2 of soju and some beer, all of which are very cheap. There is a whole ritual or etiquette that comes with drinking in Korea. I'm not going to get into that here. I'm going to do a whole video on drinking etiquette in Korea. It's quite interesting. And all of this is very affordable. I go out for barbecue with my buddy Ryan quite frequently. Our favorite restaurant is a beef restaurant, and it happens to be in my building. When Ryan is not a small man, I can eat a lot, so the 2 of us can put back quite a bit of food. Between the meat, side dishes, usually we get some kind of soup or noodle to go with it, and a fair amount of soju and beer. We never pay more than 25,000, 30,000 won per person. So it's like 25, 30 bucks. Of course, Koreans don't live on barbecue meat alone. You've got all kinds of other restaurants out there, but it's the barbecue that has kept me coming back for more. Okay, up next we got cost of living. Now, not everything is cheap here, but I have found that, at least in my experience, money goes a little bit further here in Korea than it did for me in Canada. So it's standard in any English teacher contract that your employer pays for your apartment. So that means that I do not pay rent. I am responsible for utilities. It's never been super high. My first apartment in Korea, I lived in a small little one-room studio apartment. Utilities, this is electric, gas, water. The most I ever paid was 40,000 won a month. Since I have moved into a newer building, a bigger space, that has gone up, but still the most I've ever paid was probably in the summer because the aircon was on nonstop. Sorry, air conditioner. Korean word for air conditioner here is an aircon. So it was on all the time in the summer, and I think my biggest bill was about 180,000 won, or 180 bucks, roughly that. So that's the most I've ever paid. But usually it's quite a bit less than that. Between internet, cable TV, and Netflix, combined, those three is about 45,000 won, so 45 bucks. Please tell me, I don't know what the cost of internet is in Canada, but please let me know if I'm paying more than I would be in Canada. I'm curious to know. Phone service here is, I think it's a lot cheaper. I'm not so accurate on this, but for unlimited data, it's about 65,000 won, so 65 bucks. Sticking with cost of living, vehicles. I have two vehicles in Korea. I have an old Kia van, and I have a Harley Davidson motorcycle. I pay less than 600,000 won for the entire year for both vehicles. There's no monthly payments. I pay once a year, and for the past couple of years, I've even got some cash back at the end of the year because I put so few kilometers on the van. So that was maybe 80,000 won I got back this year. So for about 520,000 won, I have the two vehicles fully insured for a year. Like I said, it's been a long time since I paid for auto insurance back in Canada, but I think that's a good deal. Let me know if it is or not. I'm pretty sure it is. Korea's public transportation system is amazing. I'll talk about that again in a second, but it's cheap. A trip into Seoul on the subway costs a couple bucks. It takes about 40 minutes for me to get into the city on the subway. Taxis are super cheap here. Uber does not exist in Korea. I think I remember rumors of the taxi association kind of kicking out Uber. I'm not exactly sure. Last time I was in Canada, I remember I was in London, Ontario, and I took a taxi with my buddy Aaron. We went not fully across town, but it was a fair distance. It took maybe a 10-minute, 15-minute cab ride, and it came to, I'm pretty sure, $22. And I remember thinking to myself, this ride in Korea would be no more than $6 or 6,000 won, maybe 7,000 won. So taxis definitely cheaper here than in Canada. So another thing is healthcare. To see a doctor costs maybe 8,000 won, $8. And to get 3 days of medicine, let's say you get a cold or a flu, to get 3 days of medicine is going to cost you maybe 5,000 won, 8,000 won. I can't comment on the surgery end of things. Korea is known as the world capital for plastic surgery. I have not done that. I don't need it, if you've noticed. For regular, ordinary healthcare, seeing the doctor, getting some medicine, really cheap. One of the biggest reasons that I have stayed here so long is my students. The kids are fantastic. I have a lot of fun at work. I don't make a ton of money, but how I spend my day is definitely worth it. I teach mainly elementary and middle school students. As an academy teacher, you really get to know your kids well. Our class sizes are very small, up to 6 kids in a class. I see them very often. I can see the kids anywhere from 2 to 5 days a week, several hours a day. I've had several students stay with me for up to 7 years. I think my longest running student was Ruby. I remember the day she came in. I taught her 2 older sisters. One of them is also named Ruby, and then there's Diana. I remember her first day. She came up to me and tugged on my shirt and looked up to me, and in this cute little voice said, "Hello, teacher." And that's the only English that she knew at the time. She was no more than 8 years old. And last year, 2 years ago, she kind of aged out. We don't teach high school, so she graduated middle school. And so I had to say goodbye. Now I still talk to her every once in a while. If you're watching this, Ruby, hello, we miss you. I've had several students study with me who have gone on to attend high school in the USA, in Canada, New Zealand. So I'll say, hello, Brian. Hope you're doing well, buddy. I just had 5 days off work for a little summer vacation. After about day 2, I was bored. It was rainy. I had nothing to do. I was ready to get back to work and see my kids. So English teaching, at least for if you do it for long enough, very rewarding experience watching these kids progress, going from only being able to say hello, how are you, to writing full essays in English. I really love my kids. I love going and goofing around with them every day. So that is definitely one of the top reasons why I've been here so long. I can't imagine having to say goodbye to my kids. One of my favorite pastimes here on the weekends is road tripping. I do quite a bit in both the van and the motorcycle. There is surprisingly a lot to see in Korea for being such a small country. Just to put it into perspective, South Korea is just over 100,000 square kilometers. North Korea is just a little bit bigger with 120,000 square kilometers. My home province of Ontario is just over 1 million square kilometers, which means you can fit South Korea inside of Ontario 10 times, over 10 times. There's a surprising amount of diversity for such a small country. When I was preparing to move to Korea, I kind of looked up Korea on the map and looked at the population and compared it to Ontario. I thought Korea would just be one big massive metropolis, one big city from coast to coast. That is hardly the case. There is a lot of beautiful countryside here. From where I live, I drive an hour west. I'm at the west coast of the Yellow Sea. If I drive an hour east, I start getting into the mountains, and I drive a couple hours further, I'm on the east coast of the Sea of Japan. Here it's known as the East Sea. Koreans don't like it being referred to as the Sea of Japan. The East Coast is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's one of the most popular places for Koreans to vacation. The South Coast is beautiful too, lots of islands. I'd say the South Coast is more similar to the East Coast. West Coast is not that pretty. I mean, you've got some crazy tide action, so much of the day it's kind of muddy and not that nice to look at. But it's got its own special quality, and I do like going there. In the middle of the country, you've got all kinds of mountains, valleys, rivers. Korea is 70% mountainous. Now, the term mountain is relative. Mountains here are not like anything you'll find in the Rockies or the Alps. Mountains here are generally much smaller, but they do make for some good hiking. Another thing about Korea I like is that if you bring a tent and you find a nice place, you can just pop up your tent and camp there. There are designated camping areas, but as far as I know, there's no law that stops you from just popping up a tent. You know, you see a nice place on the roadside. Obviously, you want to make sure it's no one's private property, but yeah, as far as I know, there's no laws from stopping you from camping wherever you want. When rainy season's finished, I will be bringing you guys along on some of my trips. All right, the weather, climate. Now, it's a little ironic that I'm talking about how I like the weather and the climate in Korea when it's been raining for 3 weeks straight. But coming from central Ontario, I can remember some very long, extremely cold and snowy winters. So it's been nice not having to deal with that in Korea. No more 5 months of winter for me. Korea does have 4 seasons. There's definitely a winter, but it is nothing compared to an Ontario winter. Winters here are much milder. We get snow. This past winter, I think it snowed less than 5 times and never stayed on the ground. When it does snow, I appreciate it a lot more than I did in Canada. From Ontario standards, it doesn't get very cold here. Koreans will tell you different. Koreans will say, oh, it's freezing outside. I think the coldest it's gotten the last couple of years, at least in my part of the country, is maybe -10. I don't even think it got that low this year. In fact, I was able to ride my motorcycle all winter this year. Summers, probably my least favorite season, are hot, very hot, rainy, and extremely humid. This year hasn't been too bad with the humidity, but it's not fun. Spring and fall are amazing. Definitely my favorite time of year. Temperature's great. Leaves on the tree, just not quite as nice as Ontario, but fall time comes, you got the changing of the leaves, very beautiful. Love going riding in that time of year. Next you got safety. Korea is an extremely safe country. I've never felt uneasy, I've never felt in danger, whether it be in the city, out in the countryside, or in a small town. You can see kids walking home, little kids walking home after dark, coming home from their academies. No problem, no parents' supervision. Very safe. The police don't even carry guns. Outside of Seoul, you barely notice the police. There's a very small police presence in my city, barely see them. They're not really needed. I'm not going to say crime doesn't exist here. I'm just saying that it's minimal. I hear stories of people forgetting their wallet or their phone at a bus stop or on a bus, and they almost always get it back. Either they come back an hour later, it's still there, or they call up lost and found, and it's no problem. This might be because of CCTV. CCTV is everywhere here, but it doesn't bother me. It keeps things safe, keeps people honest. The next reason I like living in Korea, it's not necessarily Korea specific, but it's the challenge of living abroad. Growing up in a small town and hearing stories and seeing pictures of my aunts and uncles and cousins, traveling and working abroad, really inspired me to kind of get out of my hometown and do something outside of Canada. Living somewhere where I don't speak the language can be frustrating at times, but it's always an adventure and it's a lot of fun. Living here has allowed me to learn Korean. It's not necessary to know how to speak Korean to live here. You can get by without it. I know many people that do. I am by no means fluent in Korean, but I do have a decent vocabulary. I will say my Korean is far better than my French ever was. After studying French from elementary school all through high school, I think I took it to grade 12 in high school. So yeah, challenge of living abroad is definitely, it's fun living in a place where you are different from everyone else. I do enjoy it. Another good thing about living in Korea is the overall convenience and efficiency of everything. I have everything around me I need. Within a 5-minute walk, I've got the bank, doctor, dentist, gym, grocery stores, movie theater. It's all so close by. You definitely do not need a vehicle to live here. Back home, I remember back home in Canada, you need anything, you gotta drive. The transit system, buses and subways, extremely well organized. It's efficient, it's punctual, it's cheap, it's clean. I've never been on the New York subway. I have been in a few different subway systems in Europe and in Toronto, and I can say with full confidence that Korea has probably one of the best subway systems in the world, super clean. Then there's the convenience of home delivery, food delivery. I get anything I need here delivered very quickly. I'm not sure if Canada has delivery for McDonald's or Burger King or KFC. I can get all that delivered to my front door here. I can get coffee delivered. I don't use it very often, but it's just a nice little convenience to have. And convenience stores. One of my favorite pastimes here in Korea is going to the convenience store and grabbing a beer and sitting outside on one of the tables and just kind of spending my afternoon sitting around people watching. I have a lot of good memories when I first arrived in Korea with a group of really good people. Our favorite thing to do after work was go to the convenience store and sit around, drink beer, and just chat with each other. Miss that family time. Those are the I think all the big reasons why I like living in Korea. There are some small things that make living here just a little bit easier or tolerable or fun. And so here's my kind of lightning round of little bonus things that I like about living in Korea. We've got the fast, cheap internet. I looked it up. Korea is ranked #1 in the world for fastest internet. It's super cheap. Wi-Fi is everywhere. Next, we've got no tipping. There is no tipping culture here. Restaurant, taxi cab, staying in a motel, you don't have to tip. Going along those same lines, when you're shopping, there's no added tax to your bill. So what you see in a price tag is exactly what you pay at the cash register. Another thing is the aesthetics. It's not true for everywhere in Korea. There are definitely some places that are not so clean and not so aesthetic. But in general, Korean streets and neighborhoods are pretty clean and nice places to walk around in. So another one that is not a very big reason, but it's kind of awesome, is you can cancel elevator buttons here. You go into an elevator, you push the wrong button, and you push it again, and it cancels. I don't think any elevators in Canada have that. I'm not sure, but it's definitely a nice thing to be able to cancel the elevator button. Finally, there's the people. Koreans can be extremely friendly, extremely helpful. This is not true for everybody. Let me just say that right now. There are definitely Koreans that are not friendly to foreigners. Racism does exist here, whether Korean people want to admit it or not. I've experienced it, not too often, but it does happen. But in general, Korean people can be extremely friendly, extremely helpful. I was talking to a friend the other day when I was planning this video, and she told me a story. She had just arrived in Korea from the States. She needed some things for her apartment, so she went to E-Mart, which was not near her apartment, so she had to take a taxi home. She had bought all this stuff, so she couldn't take the bus, or I forget why, but she needed to take a taxi home. So she went at a taxi stand, and she couldn't communicate with the drivers on like her address and how to get home, so they just kind of waved her off, and she ended up being there for an hour. She started crying. She didn't know what to do, so she went back into the store, and she asked one of the cashiers or one of the workers to help her find a cab. And the worker, instead of doing that, talked to one of the other staff members, and they ended up taking the E-Mart van and driving her home. The staff drove her home from E-Mart with all her stuff. So I thought that was kind of cool. Living in Korea is not all sunshine and rainbows. There are things I don't like. I am going to do a video on the things that kind of annoy me or things I don't like about Korea. But overall, it's been a really wonderful experience. So I guess that's it. Thank you for sticking around. I will say 안녕하세요, 감사합니다, and thanks for watching. Don't forget, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next video. Cheers.